So I think the discussion group did a great job of getting us thinking about the role of mediated communication, particularly in helping us understand the history and context of communication across a variety of different channels, such as computer-mediated communication. And I like the way that the discussion leading group brought up some of the ethical concerns and challenges, such as netiquette and ways to engage online in a respectful way. What I want to do as we get into some of the discussion about mediated communication is to understand some of the unique challenges and questions that mediated communication poses more broadly for issues in interpersonal communication. But before we do that, I want to put a pin on this current discussion and go back to the work that you've been doing and thinking about your essay assignment. So what I'd like you to do is find another student. This could be a partner that's sitting near you. You can also form a group of 3 if you'd like. And I just want you to take a few minutes to share the ideas that you've been pulling together for your essay, including those shared at the beginning of the class. And as you're sharing and talking about your ideas, you might think about, hey, what stands out to you the most? Maybe there's a show or movie that you're like, yeah, you should do that for your essay. What questions can you answer for each other? So maybe you have questions about the assignment or things that you can check in about. And then what ideas do you have on ways you can analyze? So what units or concepts from the course do you want to use? So I'll give you a few minutes to find somebody to talk to a little bit about that. And then we'll get back together and I'll talk a little bit more about this.
I chose to do 4 characters talk about how they start off like passive aggressive to each other, and then over time they have a relationship because they don't have anything in common. They're like being reactive. Or do an episode review, like early on in the season before like the back and show like how he thinks there's more. I like that. I kind of remember that. That's a good one. Yeah, good one. Okay. I know. It's so good.
Hey, you guys ever watch Big Mouth?
Yeah.
You mean like Kill Oh, really? Yeah, you gotta watch.
Hopefully that was helpful for you. I'm going to give you a few more opportunities in the class to continue to brainstorm and think through about this essay, including some prompts at the beginning of class. I'm not going to do those multiple choice reviews anymore since we don't have any multiple choice style exams coming up. So there'll be more opportunities for you to continue to think about this essay if you're wanting some additional support or still trying to figure out how to put that together. So I want to direct you to just a few things that I think will help you in completing this assignment and thinking through how to do so successfully. So a big way to help you is, again, we only have 4 full weeks of class left before the quarter ends, which is kind of wild, but it's just kind of how things shake up with Thanksgiving break and all of that coming up. So to give you a glance of what you should expect in the coming weeks, including units that might help you as you're thinking about through the essays. So this week, we're looking at media and communication. We have another kind of section of Wrench to talk about on Wednesday that relates to identity and the way that our identity is shaped by media. And then on Friday, we don't have new reading, but we'll kind of apply, look at some examples and applications for this unit in a little bit more detail. Next week, we'll look at communication and relationships. This might be a really interesting chapter for you to look ahead at or to think about if you want to use that for your essay. Remember that on Friday, November 19th is when you'll turn that in. The essay is due to Canvas by 11:59 p.m. Please do that as a doc, docx, or PDF. You can share a Google Doc for a rough draft. Please do not share a Google Doc for a final draft. Helps me make sure that there's a stable version. So if you use Google Docs for your assignments, that's great. One thing that I recommend is just kind of downloading it as a docx or a PDF. You should be able to do that under File Please don't submit pages files. That extension doesn't really work on Canvas and takes a lot of steps to get opened. So doc.x or PDF, uploaded to Canvas by November 19th. We have the Thanksgiving break after that. Remember, that's the full week off. There's no major assignments or anything due that week. Take the time to, do what you need to do for yourself, catching up, staying safe, so on. Following week, so the last 2 weeks that we have full class meetings, we'll look at family communication, so communication among those close to us. That'll be especially useful for you if for your final essay you're looking at the relationship between you and a family member. And then the last full week we'll look at some additional applications, including work and professional opportunities for interpersonal communication. You'll notice that during the final exam period, right, the final exams during that week are just scheduled at different times. So our final exam time is scheduled on December 15th. That's a Wednesday between 8 and 10 a.m. So we'll use that as an opportunity to share your progress and work on your essays and to troubleshoot some of the last things there. And then you'll turn in your essay, your final essay in the class, on December 16th. So you have 2 essays in the course. One is this interpersonal analysis essay on November 19th, looking at the relationship of 2 characters in a TV show or movie. Your second essay and the final essay in the class is the one where you will record a conversation with somebody else. It could be a close friend, family member, coworker, and so on, whoever it is. Just ask for their permission ahead of time. You'll transcribe that conversation, and then you'll reflect on that conversation and its relationship to interpersonal communication. So 2 different essays, do it 2 different times, 2 different prompts. So just keep those on your radar. Make sure to star and circle those due dates for assignments as a way of making sure that you know what to do. I will also be posting an extra credit opportunity for you in the coming weeks. So the way that I do extra credit is I offer sort of one additional opportunity. If you complete that, it adds 20 points or 2% onto your final grade. That's the only major extra credit that I offer, but it can be a big help, especially for people that are on the bubble, or if you feel like you didn't do a great job on your exam and want to catch up. I definitely recommend doing that. So I'll be sharing more information about that opportunity later this week for you. So those are the remaining classes. Again, I recommend having those due dates really clearly marked in a planner, a calendar, and so on, and working backwards from those, thinking about, okay, by this date, I want a draft together, I want to send Ben an outline or something like that, and using that, given your other due dates and things in the class, since I know this is when things get very, very busy for a lot of people. So I wanted to break down the remaining classes with that in mind. We'll also have several more discussion leaders in these remaining class times as well to share some of the stuff that they're doing. Any questions on the schedule or how things are going to shake out for the remaining classes? If any questions do come up, please let me know. So I want to give some general tips on the interpersonal analysis essay. I think a really good way to start here is by using the rubric to help yourself out, as well as the major assignment description here. So what I've included on Canvas is the rubric that goes over the major things to expect from this assignment and the way that I'll be grading this assignment. So I definitely recommend using that to help you as you're thinking about and trying to figure out how to do this assignment well. So if you go to this class, you'll notice, right, the rubrics. There's the interpersonal analysis essay rubric. So it's worth a total of 200 points. So the same amount as your midterm exam. So first of all, right, is it 4 to 5 pages in length, double spaced, Times New Roman, standard font margins, right? You want an introduction where you're outlining the episode or movie. So one thing that I really recommend is that you contain your major description of the show or movie to the first paragraph. Remember, you're not writing a film review, you're not offering like a synopsis of the show. So if you try to contain the context and information we need to know to the first paragraph, then you can focus on the body of the essay, analyzing and looking at the passages and elements that you've chosen. So you want to use 2 to 3 major course concepts as I kind of help you to think about in the prompt, right? So maybe you're thinking about listening and nonverbal communication, or family communication and talking. You can pick 2 or 3 of those, and you can think about those as your 2 or 3 major body points that you'll be using to analyze and apply for the essay. For your body points, right, you want to identify the major concepts and ideas that you're bringing in order to analyze the episode or film. You want to include rich supporting details. So the best way to describe rich supporting details is quotations. So I recommend including quotations and transcribing dialogue between the 2 characters, right? That's an easy way to establish those key parts. You can also use body points for application of course material, right? So one easy way to do that is to show an exchange between 2 characters, and then after that, to talk about it. So based on this conversation, we can see many of the different elements of nonverbal communication. The characters are accenting or highlighting the way that they speak nonverbally, and so on. And then using a conclusion that restates your major points. One way that I think helps a lot with essays you might be familiar with, right, is tell me what you're going to tell me. Use the introduction to establish your key ideas. Tell me, use the body points to support your major arguments, and then tell me what you told me. So use the conclusion to restate your major ideas. Avoid spelling and grammar errors, right? Use APA, MLA, or Chicago. You can pick among the 3 which one you're most comfortable with or want to take a stab at, or one that you might be using for your other classes. Use, appropriate formal writing. Make sure that you're including in-text citations in a works cited list. Unless there are things that come up and you want to use outside sources, which you can, but you don't need to. There's 2 things that you should be citing. That is the Wrench textbook, and then secondarily, you'll need to cite the TV show or movie itself. And what that looks like will vary a little bit depending on your citation format. So make sure you're including both the in-text citations and the works cited list, right? If you're running behind in the assignment, I would much rather have you turn it in late than turn it in missing in-text citations or a works cited list. Because if you don't include those things, right, that's plagiarism. That's at best a 0 on the assignment, at worst a 0 in the class. One other thing is that I also run all of the essays through turnitin.com just to check for plagiarism, right? So please don't directly copy from another class. This essay should be original to this class and should not be an essay that you're using for another class unless you've checked in with me in advance. And if it's a copy from another class or it's copying chunks from other sources without attribution, please don't do that because I do check that. So that's kind of the major need to know for this assignment. I also recommend checking on the Purdue OWL. So Purdue OWL movie citation is a really easy way for you to better understand how you might be using this. So for instance, if you go to the Purdue OWL, which is linked on Canvas, then it helps to show you how you can use the citation style. So this example here is using MLA. So if you're using a movie, right, you could include the director, distributor, release year, and so on. Also, it shows you how to cite from television episodes. So I recommend using the Purdue OWL under the citation format to help you with citing from a movie or TV show. And then for the interpersonal analysis essay, I also have an example outline to help you out too. In fact, you could even download this as a way of helping you to prepare. You can give general information about the show or movie, why it matters, information about the episode, right, and what it is that you're analyzing. Preview. For your body, right, you use a good topic sentence to describe the ideas and concepts. And then using a kind of link there. So you might say, this idea of substituting in nonverbal communication applies to the show Twilight because characters are giving each other weird looks instead of talking, and they're sharing elements about their attraction to each other without using their voice, right? So you're linking together the concepts to specific evidence from the show, and you might do this for the 2 or 3 different areas that you've selected, right? So this is kind of divided up based on whether you've done 2 or 3 major things. In the conclusion, right, you tell us what you told us, and remind us those major ideas, you review those key body points, and then you kind of end helping us understand. So what? Why does this matter? What has your analysis helped us to reveal and look at in more detail? As a result of this, we can understand the degree to which nonverbal communication impacts shows such as Twilight. In this film, the characters actually speak very little, but their nonverbal communication is a major way that relationships advance, showing us that nonverbal cues are a major way that our emotions are conveyed. So that can be a way to help to sum up the major ideas that you bring up. In addition to those resources available for you to help complete the assignment, and in addition to me being able to look at your rough drafts or outlines or to chat with you in office hours, you can think about some additional things. Again, pick a single episode of a TV show. If you are doing a TV show, right, don't cover the entirety of The Office. Pick an episode that exemplifies and highlights the relationships you're looking at. I promise you it will be easier for you to write when you have a clearer and smaller piece rather than a really big show where you might bite off more than you can chew. Quote directly from the show or film using your citation style. Again, avoid a description. This is not like a movie review or a movie summary, right? A brief introduction that gives us the information we need and is enough. Don't tell us about all the characters. Tell us about the 2 characters that you're looking at, what their relationship looks like, and so on, right? So if you're looking at Stranger Things and you want to look at the relationship between Eleven and Jim Hopper, right? Tell us about these 2 characters. You have this telekinesis young girl. You have a police officer who is helping and having her at his house. They have this kind of father-daughter relationship that's a little bit weird, right? You might use that to describe and help us understand. We don't need to know about everything else, like all the other characters and so on. So using those units or sections, pick 2 or 3 that make sense to you. They might be areas that you feel like are a really good fit for the show or movie. And remember, a good essay explains what's happening, right? So think about it as the tools that you have in the class help us to understand and unpack what is going on in the show or movie, right? It's one of those things where when you take communication classes, you can't unsee what's happening on screen. If you are having a really hard time with ideas and would like additional support on ideas for this assignment, you can also reach out to me, and I'm happy to run some ideas by you as well. Again, these slides will be up later to help you with some tips and things to think about as you're going forward. 4 to 5 pages, double space, Times New Roman, as well as works cited list. So any other questions related to this essay? Yes?
If we want you to read over our essay, how soon should we turn that in before we read it?
Yeah, so because it's due on Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday, getting it to me by next Wednesday will just make sure that I can turn in the rough draft feedback in time. So sooner the better, right? The sooner you get feedback. The absolute latest, I think, would be that Wednesday. That just keeps me in the 48-hour email window that I can guarantee a response to you. So good question. One other thing is, as we're thinking about the remainder of the class, because we have a couple essays and we don't have any major exams, like a cumulative exam, there's less of a focus, right, on getting all the terms and stuff down, like in a hard-coded way. So you might zoom out onto the major ideas or findings that come out to you from the readings or from our discussions in class, right? So as you're thinking about how do I take notes, how do I track material, you might think about, there's some terms and some theories and ideas that stand out to you, but what are the big ideas that you're interested in incorporating for these last essays? So I recommend taking notes with a kind of larger picture. What were the major things that stood out to me today, that I learned, that stuck out, and so on. So, that being said, I want to start a discussion on mediated communication, which we'll pick up on and discuss more on both Wednesday and Friday. So, there's, of course, over this past year and a half, a really big emphasis on the ways that mediated communication, the use of media, has impacted us, right? One thing that's just a really common misconception, in fact, I do this all the time, is saying the media, right? So the term media is plural. So the use of media, or media, can help us to understand and communicate on a lot of different ideas. So you can think about it as like a mediator. So if you've ever been in a conflict with somebody else, right, a mediator is typically a third person, or third party who's neutral, who helps to facilitate the discussion and help people work something out, right? So you're disagreeing with somebody else, you have mediators show up, the mediator is the third person that manages the interaction. In the same way, when communication is mediated, there is media that helps to manage and direct the interaction too, right? So obviously it's through the use of things such as texting, using a variety of forms like Zoom, phone, calls, FaceTime, all of that stuff, right? So significant portion of our communication is mediated. There's a focus on mass media that's offered in some courses, like media ethics by Dr. Chen, that focuses on how mediated communication reaches a larger audience. For this class, we're focused on interpersonal communication, which is focused on two people. So our major concern, right, is how mediated communication happens between two people. How are two people using media in order to engage with each other in an interactive and dynamic way? Marshall McLuhan is actually a major scholar in communication that goes back all the way to the 50s, at a time in which television was taking a greater and greater role over time. And Marshall McLuhan, well before the internet and social media, put forth probably his most famous sentence, and that is that the medium is the message. In other words, McLuhan's argument was that when communication is mediated, when it uses media, that the medium itself, the way that something is communicated, is absolutely foundational in what that message is, and substantially changes the messages that we get every day, right? Really good example, right, is something like TikTok, where the use of videos that you can easily scroll down to and follow along, right, has changed the way that people use social media in general. People know that there's going to be a short video, right? They're going to use TikTok for that. My older sister is a middle school teacher. She told me a really scary story about how some of the middle school kids like to pee all over the bathrooms and then record it on TikTok so that they can go viral. That stuff's weird, but it suggests that the way that we use media, including TikTok, substantially changes the way that we interact, and so on. Obviously, social media like TikTok can use a lot of good too. I'm not one of those people that says, oh, social media is destroying society. It's more complicated, right? Another example is Twitter, right? So one of the most notable things about Twitter is that it limits the number of characters that you can use, right? So sometimes people get around this by posting tweets in parts, but because it's a lot shorter, you can't do paragraphs and paragraphs, like your grandma might do on Facebook. There's a lot more of an emphasis on short to the point responses. In fact, a lot of people talk about hot takes and very pointed or controversial opinions. Twitter has in many ways shaped the ability to do that because it emphasizes those shorter and more punchy and provocative messages. So whether or not the medium is itself the message is still hotly debated, right? I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. Media shapes and definitely helps us to mold the message. The message itself is something we're choosing to share, right? There's a lot of new opportunities and ways that we can use media that are definitely related to these new technologies. So in this way, technology, including mediated communication, does a lot of things. It enables, it physically allows us to do stuff. So a lot of my research is related to disability communication and how folks with disabilities are able to use online and mediated forums in order to communicate and advocate for things who otherwise might not be able to attend in person. So if somebody has a really severe migraine or doing something like a protest isn't wheelchair accessible, somebody can go online and use mediated forums to do that. It facilitates, right? It provides a space. If you've ever used Canvas for something like a conversation, like in an online class where you're responding to other students, it's facilitating that type of discussion. It invites us. So maybe you've created a new Instagram account and you get a push notification that's like, you haven't posted in a while, share a new photo, right? It also encourages us. It allows us to express, share different parts of ourselves, and so on. So these are all ideas we're going to pick up on more on Wednesday. If you've ever played a game like Second Life or similar online mediated communication, yeah.
Can you go back to that, right?
Yep. So if you've ever played a game like Second Life, or you've played something like Neopets or Club Penguin, when that was still a thing, right? There's a lot of communication online through games and so on. Even more recent examples like Among Us, right, where it has this social function, where we use communication as a way to disclose and share who we are. Avatars and character builders, right, are opportunities for us to do that too. So if you've ever played a game where you're creating your own character, World of Warcraft, right, that's a major way for you to express and share elements of your identity. So we manage our impressions and our apprehension that we have with communicating in order to engage online. So it helps us to manage the impressions and relationships that we form with other people. Impression management goes back to the idea that we want to present ourselves in a certain way and appeal to things like an employer. And studies suggest that online settings are a way for us to manage communication apprehension. We feel more comfortable online, oftentimes because we're able to be honest and share who we are, and it's less scary than doing so face-to-face. So we'll pick up on some of these ideas a little bit more on Wednesday, especially as they relate to identity. So just as a reminder to wrap up for today, make sure to plan out these major due dates, including the essay on the 19th. And mediated communication helps us to understand how we communicate online through a lot of different channels. Next class, please read these 10 pages. We'll talk about media and identity, and then we'll also spend time in class on Wednesday debriefing and going through the midterm exam. So welcome back. I hope that you all have a great rest of your day. Please pass forward the individual prompts that I asked you to complete for today. And I will see you again on Wednesday.